Lately there's been a slew of newer games tested on the M1 Mac, including Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Today I want to test its predecessor and an old favorite, Deus Ex Human Revolution. I should note that I am playing the original, not the Director's Cut remaster released a couple of years later. The Director's Cut is almost playable, but stutters just a bit too much to be enjoyable. In these scenes we see Adam Jensen, the cyborg protagonist, doing battle with a gang in Detroit. Performance data is difficult to get in Parallels, so I have to rely on my gut. It feels like the game is getting in the 40 to 50 FPS range. While this game is supposedly capable of DirectX 11, I could only get DX9 mode to work with low settings at 720p. It still looks pretty good for a game of its age and is quite playable. It's surprising the game doesn't run at higher settings given reports of how well Mankind Divided supposedly runs. I should note that I attempted to get the game to work in crossover, but the result was completely unplayable, though the game technically ran. In Parallel 16.5, in DX9 mode, playback was very smooth, with very little latency. In this footage I'm using an M1 MacBook Air with an 8-core GPU. I've also applied the so-called thermal mod to prevent the M1 from overheating and throttling back performance. This involves taking the bottom cover off of the MacBook Air, attaching a couple of thermal pads to the M1, and then reattaching the bottom. This essentially turns the bottom of the Air into a giant heatsink, and allows it to get the same performance as the 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro. While this is not a risky mod, it carries a high likelihood of voiding your warranty, so proceed at your own risk. I am also using HDMI hardware capture in this video to reduce the performance impact of recording to almost nothing. If you play the game on a Mac Mini or a MacBook Pro, you should see nearly identical performance. If you're using a MacBook Air, you'll need an 8-core GPU and the thermal mod to see the same kind of frame rates. The Director's Cut of the game is readily accessible on Steam, and I'm not sure how hard it is to get the original version. I did make several attempts to get the remaster to perform acceptably, including some registry edits and other tweaks. In the end, though, I had no luck getting it to perform acceptably, though I imagine you could play it if you could stomach the stuttering. Crossover was also a bust, both for the original game and the Director's Cut. While the game would technically run, frame rates were in the single digits and the controls were completely unresponsive. I did try both the DXVK and Wine DirectX, and neither could provide anything approaching acceptable performance. While Mankind Divided supposedly featured better gameplay, I found the story in Human Revolution to be more compelling. DXMD also featured more cyborg enhancements than found in DXHR, though I found the variety of playstyles in the original to be quite satisfying. Some people also found the yellow filter in DXHR to be annoying, though there were third-party mods to remove it, and the Director's Cut mostly did away with the yellow U. Let me know in the comments if there's any interest in coverage of the Director's Cut or mods for the original game. I do intend to do a follow-up video on Mankind Divided, and I'm eager to see if it performs as well as I'm seeing on YouTube.